Welcome, everyone. Welcome to my third year anniversary of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. And I'm so excited that you can be with us tonight on this third year anniversary. Yay, we made it 3 years. It's been a very interesting 3 years to say the least. And thank you for tuning in tonight for this live show, as they always are live. I appreciate all of you from the very bottom of my heart for sticking with me for all this time. I'm Pam, of course. I'm a public relations and marketing professional who happens to have a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And that's the whole reason why I started this show, because I knew that a lot of people do not follow news and politics and things like that like I do. And I wanted to have a place where all people could talk and ask questions and participate in conversations and learn, right? Learn, come together, learn, and we do better. Okay, so on this third year anniversary of the show, I had four faith based leaders. However, one is in flight right now, and we wish Reverend Kendal McBroom safe travels. But we're going to talk about the intersection of moral values, Christianity, and politics. All right. So after Bishop Marianne Buddy, in a very calm manner, addressed Trump about his policies at the National Cathedral, about the fear that his proposed policies, created among marginalized groups and communities. Needless to say, Trump and his base got very angry, and the good bishop had to undergo many threats. In fact, Trump demanded that she apologize to him. This is why we're having this discussion tonight. I'm looking forward to your feedback, you audience members, and I see you guys already in the chat, and as well as my guests. Let me say hello to you guys first. Okay. All right, Brian. Hey there, Brian. Good to see you. Renee, hey, Renee. Renee twice. Okay. Emmanuel, hello. Hello. Thank you, Lee. Thank you so much. Hey, Shoei. You got a pastor here from the Midwest. She's in Ohio. And Renee, thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Hey there, Pastor Ron. All right. So I'm going to bring up my first guest, and she is Reverend Dr. Let me see. Hold on. Reverend Dr. Amariah McIntosh. She is a pastor in the Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, having pastored churches in Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio. I'm a Michigan native, soror. She currently is the pastor of Phillips Chapel CME Church in Akron, Ohio. Dr. McIntosh is also the Associate Director of the Ohio Council of Churches. She is the state parliamentarian and chaplain of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, of course, in Ohio, and is a Crystal Dove member of the sorority. Welcome to your first time and not your last time to the show, Dr. Amariah.
Good evening. Thank you.
Yes.
And a shout out to my friend Dr. Lee Young for the hookup.
Okay. Yes. All right. And so I was going to be introducing Kendal, but Kendal's going to come back on this show again. And so next up I have is Reverend Dawn Daly-Mack. She is the Associate Minister of Cool Spring Missionary Baptist Church in Gaston, North Carolina. She is a devoted community member and is the president of the Northampton County branch of the NAACP. And I believe she was the first female to get that position, right? I remember that from our show. Okay, as well as she is also the health chair for the North Carolina NAACP State Conference. Reverend Dawn is a dedicated nursing professional and brings her background into her work for promoting health equity, social justice, and equality. She is a known powerful voice in rural North Carolina for civil rights and health care. Welcome back to the show, Reverend Dawn Daly-Mack.
Thank you. It's good to be back, and happy 3rd anniversary.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And last but certainly not least, he is no stranger to the show, Mr. Greear Webb. Greear is not technically a minister, but the way he commands congregations that he's asked to speak to, one would never know. You just would know he wasn't. Uh, his preaching papers are on the way. They're in the making, okay? Greear is a second-year law student at Emory University School of Law on a full scholarship. He is a scholar, thought leader, a minister without his papers, and my favorite Gen Zer. Welcome back, Greear.
Thank you, Pam. Glad to be on the show with these two great reverends, and happy anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't believe it. 3 years, you know what? And I tried, you guys, I tried to do, this is my 101 show today.
Wow.
And I try to go every Sunday. I don't always make it. I don't do it on holidays or the Super Bowl. And then I gave myself a bit of a break. Yeah, because the men say, we're not listening to you on the Super Bowl. So anyway, so I gave myself a break over this holiday break because we're partially in mourning, but you just have to regroup and go back at it, right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. So, guys, let's get into it. No doubt, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of the greatest preachers of our lifetimes of the gospel. And he was in my opinion, very political, or was it morality? Which was it? So I'm going to do a round robin. Each of you can take that. Which was it? Was it political or morality? Was a little bit of both. What was it? Dr. Amariah, you first.
I think his moral stance drove his politics. Most people don't know that he was a registered Republican. But then back then, a lot of Southern blacks were registered Republicans.
That's true.
Because of Lincoln and such. But social justice is the heart of Scripture. From beginning to end, how we live out our love for God is how we treat our neighbors. So for folk to say Martin Luther King was political, you have to say Moses was political. You have to say Jesus was political. You have to say Paul was political. Of course, the religious right today want to separate and divide it. The one guy who wrote that treatise and got all of those signatures saying that the gospel was not about social justice. I don't know what gospel he was reading.
I don't either.
Yes.
I don't either.
Yes. And so his faith, Martin Luther King's faith, drove his call. And see, and nobody, as long as he was talking about equal treatment for black folk, they could tolerate his sayings. But when he spoke against Vietnam War, when he spoke about militarism, to use the line from a sermon I plan to preach next Sunday, he went from preaching to meddling, and that's when he got in trouble.
Yes. Reverend Dawn, your thoughts? Politics or morals?
I think it's morals as well. I agree with that assessment. And also, I agree with what she's saying. As long as he was saying, be nice to Black people, that was okay. And I always talk about how you affect two things, two P's, power and their pockets. Once you reach into their pockets and affect their level of power, then you got a problem. It was no different in Jesus's day when all of those religious leaders of the time that were really, working for Rome, they had power and they were getting some money. And so with Jesus coming along and preaching to them something different, but was what God had always intended, he came and took some of their followers away. So that means hit their pockets and then their power as well. And so, yes, it's not politics, it's morals, but they absolutely affect each other.
All right. Okay, Greear, your thoughts?
I mean, just jumping off that point from Reverend Dawn, I totally agree. And Pam, you've heard me say this before, but the root word of politics, P-O-L, comes from the ancient Greek, which means of a citizenry or of a people. So if you care about people, you care about politics. I also agree with Reverend McIntosh's assessment that if you're going to say that Dr. King was political, you have to say that many of the prophets and leaders throughout scripture were political because they were talking the same message, right? A message of hope and love and unity and justice and radical love, equity and economic liberation. And so for me, when I think about the intersection between folks like Jesus or biblical narratives of social justice and Dr. King, I think they're inextricably intertwined. I think it's just so necessary to mention now that with Bishop Buddy's comment, a lot of folks are saying, and I think, Pam, you shared this on Facebook, that she should apologize. Why should she apologize? She's just preaching, right? She's preaching. And so I think Dr. King did that as well. He preached the truth. He preached about love and justice and equity. And it's really up to us to carry his mantle forward. And so I just hope that we all hold on to hope as we head into these next 4 years. It will be tough. It's going to be difficult. But as I said on the show recently, Pam, it's time for us to recharge and not unplug from the wall. We need to stay engaged, but it's okay to go on do not disturb. So let's make sure we're engaging in self-care as we move forward. And so as we begin this conversation tonight, let me also say this, Pam. No, I'm not a pastor. I'm not a preacher. I don't proclaim to prophesy or predict as many pastors do, but I have most assuredly witnessed the goodness of God in my life. And so I'm grateful for the chance to share about it with you and your listeners and viewers tonight.
All right. All right. Well, we need all of that type of encouragement as possible. Because I really do think as I sit back and really assess what's happened over the past 6 days of reign of terror, it really was a shock and awe campaign.
Well, can I say something,
yes.
Pam? What we've got to remember about last Tuesday, they didn't invite her to come to the White House. They chose to go to the house that she has charge over.
Right. That's right.
Okay?
That's right.
So, I mean, I don't know why they would expect. Well, I know they were expecting to get another Paula White type message. Yeah, I'm gonna call it out for what it is.
Please,
he got you. That's what you got me on here, right? He was used to a Paula White who kept telling him about how he was called and anointed of God, and that all the people must do as he says, because if you disagree with him, if you call him out, if you challenge him, then you are rebelling against God, and God is going to punish the people who object. She didn't learn her lesson when she called for them those angels out of Africa and put Biden in the White House, because you see we ain't heard too much from her since then.
Well, it's a good
thing. They went to her house, if you will. I mean, it's still God's house, but she is the rector. She is in charge of the National Cathedral. They went into her territory So if they go into her territory, they should have been prepared to hear from God. Okay. And not mess.
So they're not used to going to church. That's
no. Well, they're not used to hearing the word of God.
Yeah.
He was looking, just to interject before Reverend Dawn goes, I think he was looking for a 2 Corinthians message. And she said, no, it's going to be 2 Corinthians here.
That's right.
We preach 2 Corinthians in my church. Go ahead. Go ahead, Reverend Dawn.
2 Corinthians. I love that.
Yes.
I was just, one of the things they were like, many of them said it wasn't the right place or the right time. It was absolutely the right place.
Yes, it was.
They were in a church. And
right.
she did exactly what she was supposed to do.
Right. And she's delivering a homily. Duh. Okay.
Yeah. And they're just not used to hearing the truth.
That's
because their version of Christianity has very little to do with what we're talking about here today.
That's right. Because if they'd come into any of our churches, they would have heard a similar message.
For you a little later in the show about one of us in there.
I'm just saying. I don't know why her message was so surprising to people, because most of us who call ourselves Christians, most of us who call ourselves followers of Jesus Christ, those are the messages we hear Sunday after Sunday after Sunday.
But they don't go to church. You got to remember that. They don't go to church, right, Greear?
Well, remember, they also have a $60 Bible that probably doesn't have those words in it.
Look, here are my thoughts on that, Pam. I agree with Reverend McIntosh. That was obviously the Lord's house, but her place of presiding. And so she's going to say what she wants to say. I don't think she said anything inflammatory personally. I don't think she said anything out of coordination with the gospel. And I think, look, let's also remember that a week or two before this, Jimmy Carter was eulogized and funeralized in that very place. That's where we had Andrew Young talking about justice and talking about how he wasn't sure about Jimmy Carter at first, but how President Carter came to be a real advocate for Black folks, especially here in Georgia, where I am currently. And so when we're talking about messages of love and justice in such a place, it's only right that the pastor or leader of that place continues that during a service. And so I went back and watched the video the other day. It got reposted onto one of my social media feeds. And I actually did a little bit of people watching. And I looked at the crowd, okay, especially in that section where President Trump and Vice President Vance, I just can't do it, and Vice President Vance were sitting, and they were squirming, and they were just so it's not that they were unexpected, they were uncomfortable, right? They were uncomfortable because that is, to your point, Pam, whether they go to church regularly or not, and to Reverend McIntosh's point, they weren't I don't want to say they weren't expecting that message, because I think that they were prepared for her to go her own way, but they weren't comfortable, right? They just didn't have any foundation upon which to listen and actually hear that word. And so I saw them squirming and a bit uncomfortable. And I'll say, from a bird's eye view, I think that's very troubling for this nation. When you're talking about love and justice and caring for the stranger, and advocating for people who are not accepted in many times their families and in society generally. And when we're talking about LGBTQ plus people, when we talk about healthcare, however that looks, if those conversations make you uncomfortable, I'm not sure how you're going to lead us in the diverse nation that we are for the next 4 years.
He loves to have his ego stroked.
Yeah.
And anybody who does not stroke his ego, his key word is always, they were nasty. Remember when he went to the NABJ, and the first question they asked,
I was there.
Let's talk about what you have already done. And what was his reply? Well, that's a nasty question. That person was nasty. And anytime anybody challenges him on his thinking or on his words, his go-to expression is, they're nasty. So she's in great company. If she's a nasty, a couple of years ago, we were all celebrating being nasty women. And so we have now welcomed Bishop Mary and Buddy into the Nasty Woman Club.
He also likes to tell those people that don't agree with him how unintelligent they are.
Yes.
And
he's the big dummy.
Not very smart, are they? Enough said about that, because we
Yes.
know who's not the smart one. I mean,
That's
especially
right.
you know, any woman of color that speaks up, she's just not really smart. You know, knowing
Yes.
that we have Black women have more degrees than anybody else in the world, but we're not intelligent at all.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And the fact she was a short woman too, who
I didn't know.
she was a short woman and she brought him down to size.
You know what? Short people power, I say.
That's right.
Let me ask you guys this. You know, one of the things that's really been pronounced to me, that has stayed in my head, is the fact that the 7 deadly sins, and one of which, of course, is greed. And I have really been thinking about that a lot, about greed, as we keep talking about this oligarchy and all this type of thing, and how many billions these people are worth and all of that. And yet they seem very miserable. And so I'm no scholar of the Bible whatsoever, but I do understand now why greed is a deadly sin, along with gluttony. Too much of anything isn't good for you, even too much money.
Right.
Right. Yes.
Like, it just makes one miserable, and they don't know what the heck to do with it. And you know what? Elon Musk, or second tier President Musk, or first tier President Musk, however he is, have we been able to affiliate any, philanthropic activities with his name at all?
None.
Nothing. He's the wealthiest man in the world. And yet it is clear to me, and I don't know, and what do you think Jesus would do if he were to come back and to see the setup we've got going on now with all of this money and stuff in our government? And then we're talking about they're Christians and this type of thing. You know what I'm saying? It's really Christian nationalism, but it's not. It's not Christianity in the sense that we believe.
Right. It's almost like performative Christianity to me.
It is.
I mean, to your question, what would Jesus do? I really worry to wonder. I mean, he might come down here for a millisecond and hop on up back to heaven to send the fire down, because it's really crazy what is going on here in this country in particular.
Mhm.
I just think, and Reverend McIntosh mentioned this word a second ago, but pride, right? Even too much pride. These people thinking that they are kings, that they are gods. And I just think of 1 Peter 5:6-9. That says, humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that he may exalt you in due time, and cast all of your anxiety on him. And so I don't think that Trump or Vance and these folks are humbling themselves and casting their cares on the Lord. I think they think somehow in their warped minds that they can control all of this, and that they're able, between the California wildfires and the North Carolina rebuilding and rolling back DEI and, all of this, I think they think that that is what they're supposed to be doing, because they have this mandate, this word they keep using, from half of America, which is really a fallacy. However, I think that the Christianity that they're practicing, if you can even call it that, is quite performative. And so I don't say that from a place of judgment. I say that from a place, and how we open to this conversation, they're not ruling or leading from a social justice perspective. They're doing it more from a perspective of pride and from a perspective of greed. And so I think what they need is some humility. And I just, again, am going to have to hold on to hope here these next 4 years that at some point they may be humbled. But I think the more realistic expectation is that on the local level, we continue to pour into one another and support one another and strategize and figure out what's to come after these 4 years. I think that's where our time and energy might be better spent, is strategizing and organizing locally, and getting back to this idea of the Black church and a diverse church in general leading our communities forward, and stop looking so much to the federal government and to the White House, but instead looking to the hills from whence cometh our help.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus
Amen.
once told a parable. Jesus never met an occasion where he couldn't tell a parable.
Mm-hmm.
And it had to do with, he told a parable because of two brothers fighting over their inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
One tells Jesus, tell my brother to share with me, whether he deserved it or not. Just give it to, because he's my brother. That's the money. I got to get it. And Jesus tells a story, a parable about a man named Elon Musk who had so much money and had so much stuff. And he looked at all he had, and he could have shared it. He could have worked for equitable distribution so that even if he gave away, somebody else would still have some. But instead, he said, what I will do is just build bigger barns to hoard all my stuff. And God speaks to him that night and says, you fool. I think Martin Luther King preached a sermon on that, why Jesus called the rich man a fool, and said, tonight your soul will be required of you. In your lifetime, all that has mattered to you is money. But guess what? And this is how I'm reframing it. You're not going to be able to take it with you, and you're not going to live long enough to reap the benefits the way you want to reap it. All you're going to do is leave it for somebody else to fight over. Okay? And all of this broligarchy, okay? Jeff Bezos, from his divorce settlement from his first wife, she took that cash and she used it to help people.
She spent a lot.
Yes. And they complained about it, and she spent even more.
Yeah, shout out to her, Mackenzie Scott.
Yes.
Yes. You know, she used her resources to help people. That's what we get blessed to do. We are blessed not to hoard it, not to pat ourselves on the back, not to receive accolades and awards, but God blesses certain people to be a blessing in the lives of others.
Amen.
Jesus talked more about the danger of being beholden and making money and riches your idol than he talked about people going to heaven or hell.
All right. So we're going to shift a little bit. I want to show you all, share with you a clip of Harold Belafonte speaking on Dr. King, one of the last conversations the two of them had. Because I'm real curious, what would Dr. King do if I don't think our society would quite be like this had he still lived. I don't. I really don't. But that's just my opinion. Hold on one second. I'm going to share my screen. And I am going to, okay.
What's the matter, Martin? You seem very agitated. He said, well, I am. But I've come upon a thought that I don't know how to deal with at this moment. I said, well, what is it? He said, we fought long for integration. It looks like we're going to get it. I think we get the laws. He says, but I'm afraid that I've come upon something I don't know quite what to do with. I'm afraid that we're integrating into a burning house. And when we asked for further clarification, Andy Young was with me at that time, my wife, others. He said, America's lost whatever little moral vision it had. Its moral sense has run away from the nation. And a nation that is not governed by morality and moral principles is a nation that's headed for an abyss. And I think black people have been struggling to get into this system, maybe getting into a system that in the final analysis is a Sodom and Gomorrah, will not work because its selfish goals, its need for profit, its need for supremacy, its need to be the best has clouded its moral vision. And with no moral vision, no nation can be healthy enough to lead its people anywhere except to destruction.
Okay. All righty then. So, thoughts, Greear, on that?
That's powerful. Again, just to hear Harry Belafonte invoking the name of Andrew Young and to know that he's still living, right? To your point, Pam,
Yes.
you were questioning whether things would be like this if Dr. King and some of those from that generation are still around, or would still be around. And some of them are, but unfortunately they're fading. However, they are still our elders and our ancestors, or our yes, both our elders and our ancestors. I mean, there are still folks around like Reverend Jesse Jackson, like Andrew Young, but of course some have passed on, like C.T. Vivian and Dr. King and others. And so I think just in hearing that, I think that almost answers the question that you posed to us at the beginning, Pam. He was talking so much about morality and his morality guiding his politics. Again, politics being rooted in people. So what is right should then be translated and reflected into what you do to others, how you serve others, how you talk about others, how you treat others. And so when I was home last weekend in North Carolina for Dr. King Day, I had the opportunity to go to Western Wake County, a place I don't go to often. And I think some of the folks who were at those celebrations have joined the call tonight, Pam. And I told them that I really don't think we need more Dr. Kings alone, but more kingdom-minded people. Folks who have an ear and an eye for the marginalized and the least of these, like Christ did. And so I really hope, I guess, in concluding, that we continue to coach up leaders like Dr. King, but more so leaders who have an idea that life should be rooted in justice and in service. And I think young people have that potential. And so I hope that folks, especially of color, are coaching up young people in their communities and supporting young people in their communities, including from Gen Z, so that we can take up this mantle. Maybe it looks a little bit different, especially with social media, but I think we have what it takes to really propel some of those dreams of Dr. King's forward and have them become visions and realities.
Absolutely. And with the freezing of the Civil Rights Department and all of the cases and what have you right now, it's just really quite frightening. Reverend John, what are your thoughts?
In listening to what the conversation that Harry Belafonte had with Dr. King, I often think about how after the civil rights movement, it never ended. We're always fighting for civil rights. However, people became very complacent, thought we had arrived. Like you said, we joined and became part of this burning thing that's going on. Yes. And some of us bought into it. Oh, we're here. We've arrived. There have always been, people behind the scenes that have wanted to erase what has been done and want to get back to the way things were historically. I believe that genie is out the bottle and cannot be put back in. They can roll back whatever they want. He can write all the executive orders, but we've seen too much. We've done too much. We know too much. We're no longer a bunch of people that speak a foreign language that were just dropped on the shore. We're here. We are resilient. We're up for the fight. But we have to remember that this nation, even though, on one hand, they say it was founded on Christian principles.
Oh, please.
But then they wrote into the Constitution and all of their documents, they want to separate church and state. But now when you talk about this Christian nationalism, they're making it seem like there is no distinction between religion and politics when it's their way.
Right.
It's their version of Christianity.
Right.
They have no clue whatsoever what real Christianity is like. And I'll just say this last thing. I remember hearing a preacher speak that he had just preached a sermon and somebody came to him afterwards and wanted to know where he got all his liberal talking points from. And the minister said, those were not liberal talking points. Those were the words of Jesus. The man looked at him and said, oh, well, that's not going to fly here. That's too weak.
I remember that.
Jesus wouldn't fly there then.
That's right. That's right. Well, I appreciate you sharing that clip. I think I'm the only one maybe around the table that was actually alive and actually heard some of, Dr. King for real. But we have allowed, and thank goodness for Dr. Bernice
Yes.
and Martin III,
Mm-hmm.
who work tirelessly
Mm-hmm.
to keep their father's message
Mm-hmm.
and thoughts and words from being distorted. And they don't hesitate
Mm-hmm.
to call folk out
That's right.
when
That's
they feel that their father and his memory are being misappropriated.
right.
But what we have done in our instant age, we have reduced Dr. King to a soundbite. I
Mm.
have a dream
Yeah.
and I've been to the mountaintop.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
But since he started his own ministry, last Sunday, I went to a sermon that Dr. King preached in Montgomery at the church he pastored,
Mm-hmm.
entitled Paul's Letter
Mm-hmm.
to the American Christians.
Oh.
And he
Wow.
preached this sermon in 1956.
Wow.
And in it, he was talking to American Christians as if it was Paul writing the letter.
Wow.
It's within this letter that he talks about 11 o'clock on Sunday morning being the most segregated hour in
Mm-hmm.
America. He talks about how, as Americans, we are so focused on, as Brother Greear said, on achieving and wanting this supremacy attitude. We have to be the first, the best, the brightest.
Mm-hmm.
We have to use all of these superlatives.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, we're losing our moral compass.
We've lost it.
Yes, he wrote the letter to a Birmingham jail
Yeah.
where he told white pastors, those who are not in the struggle with us are probably worse for us
Mm-hmm.
than the ones who blatantly hate us. And so we are seeing this with preachers who say Bishop Buddy was wrong. Okay?
Yeah.
They're the same one. Their fathers and grandfathers were the
Mhm.
ones who told Martin Luther King, not yet.
Yeah. Not yet. We've heard
And
that enough
Yes.
here.
And so Martin has always, first of all, he was a preacher of the gospel, unapologetically. Secondly, he was intelligent. I mean, the man has an earned PhD. Okay? And even though they tried to say stuff about him plagiarizing some stuff, that didn't hold water. All right. The man was gifted and intelligent and understood that until we, as a people, blacks, whites, browns, and if it was a political issue then about LGBTQIA and trans people, Martin believed that we must all sit at the table together, that there is no person or group of people that are any less deserving than anyone else, that all of us, the same God, created us all. And if we don't help each other, if we don't love each other, if we don't defend and stand up when injustice happens to each other, we are, in the words of Jesus, not fit for the kingdom or the kingdom.
Right. That's
Well,
powerful. Just briefly, Pam.
yes, please.
I loved hearing Reverend McIntosh invoke Reverend Bernice King, who's down here in Atlanta where I am and has the King Center under her control now. And they brought in a North Carolina legend, Reverend William Barber, to do the
Yes.
speech down here for King Day last Monday. And he talked about the song by John Legend and Common, One Day When the Glory Comes. And he says he feels like we can get there soon, but we all have to really lean in.
Right.
All of us.
Yes.
But Reverend McIntosh also invoking the letter from Birmingham jail, which I think is a great piece from Dr. King, made me think that I wonder if Dr. King would be writing a new piece or is writing a new piece in heaven right now called Letter to the Black Pastors. Because I'm still seeing too many Black pastors in particular who are not agreeing with Bishop Buddy, who are not calling out wrongdoing and injustice, who are still leaning in and cozying up to whiteness and white supremacy instead of owning their Blackness and owning their diversity and striving for equity. They only seem to be seeking inclusion into the white supremacy's power structure. And so I want
Daryl
to know.
Scott threatened Roland Martin. I'll get Trump on you. Like,
right.
On,
And so I want to know, where are the pastors like Reverend Raphael Warnock, someone put in the comments here, like my pastor here in Atlanta, Dr. Jamal Bryan. I want to see more of these.
Pastor here, Dr.
J. Drew Sheard is a great voice for social justice, right? And so I think all of this, in wrapping up this point, Pam, understanding that we do have a call, a moral call, a charge given to us by Jesus in the gospel, but also that has been reiterated by folks like Dr. King, and even by other leaders throughout history like Mahatma Gandhi, and even white leaders who were unafraid to march with Dr. King, Jewish and otherwise. And to still see that folks of color are okay letting other folks of color be marginalized, that Latino folks, some are okay with their Latino and Latina brothers and sisters just being incarcerated and being rounded up, and we'll figure out the details later. We must stand up for ourselves as a diverse people. And I want to see more Christian folks actually lean into, locate the words of Christ in the gospel and lean into that message and then spread it amongst their communities.
Reverend Don, what do you think? What do you think that we need to do now? Excuse me. Now that the good Bishop Marion Buddy has been threatened, just for speaking the truth to power in the National Cathedral. What's next?
We need to follow her lead and continue that speaking truth to power. Some people will cower and say, oh no, they're going to get mad if we do this. And, we've had a lot of that go on, and that's kind of where we are now. Historically, the Black church is where everything happened. It was the center of all things. Oftentimes, the preacher was the only person that could read and would bring the news, not just the good news, but all of the news to the people that couldn't read it. And, we've stopped doing that. People are afraid, I'm going to lose my 501c3 if I say this, that, or the other thing. Truth be told, I know a lot of the smaller churches in the rural community don't even have a 501c3. So what have you got to lose? Go ahead and tell the truth. We have to be convicted that what we've been doing is putting people to sleep. And it's time for us all to wake up.
Well, you know what? I have and I'm going to pull up another video of one such preacher of a gospel that I believe is none of the above. But one of the things I think that's really fragmented us as a people of Black people in particular. So many people are unchurched now, so many. And yet we have these huge mega churches and what have you. And in those churches, they may be talking about, I think a lot of it is more of the prosperity gospel, and it's not so much the gospel in some of them of how to live your life. The old school stuff, you do this, you do that, or setting the example of having the family programs and, all of those things that better enhance people's lives and stuff. What do you think about that? I wonder, are we in a pickle now because we don't have that type of leadership anymore. And my show last week, we talked about that more about is, do we need a singular leader? I know Greer was saying that we could have multiple leaders, and I think that's the truth, especially with social media and stuff. But I don't know.
Well, we've never had a singular leader.
Well,
Martin Luther King, as we talk about Dr. King, Dr. King was opposed by more Black preachers than he had in his corner. Because they felt that he was stirring up the waters. And you gonna bring them white folk down on our heads. Okay? What little bit we got, Martin, you gonna cause us to lose it. Preach the gospel and leave that civil rights and equality stuff alone. Our preachers were the ones, now there were some, because I know even some of the preachers in my own CME church, Bishop Nathaniel Lindsay and Jesse Douglas and some others, they marched and went to jail with Dr. King, a CME lawyer. Donald Hollowell was Dr. King's attorney in Atlanta. But the fact is, we've never had a singular voice. And we shouldn't look to that. What we need is a united voice. Okay, we can. There is room at the table for a Gina Stewart and a William Barber and a Teresa Snorton and a Jamal Bryant and a J. Drew Sheard. That's why they have the Conference of National Black Churches. All of those denominational voices come together to be a singular voice, united under what we do to make all of our lives better. And it can be done. God's not raising up one person. God has to raise, because we're all from different experiences.
That's true.
We all have different backgrounds, educations. We need a Gen Z leader. We need a Boomer leader. We need Gen X. We need them all. We need millennials. We need them all. We need voices, because everybody's not hearing it the same way.
Right.
And we can't push one aside who may not still. We need a voice that our young people can rally around.
Right.
But we also need one that our middle-aged folk can rally around too. But they have to be saying the same message.
Right. Let me interject though. What I'm saying is that even when in getting all those people together, it's like when you're in a group, in sorority meeting. If you don't have one person, come on now, it's several people on that council that's all working together, but there is one person, the bacillus usually, that says, and then everybody kind of comes that.
Now, everybody ain't Greek, so use English terms.
But we have to, you got to have somebody that's going to say something.
Yes.
Because you'll get some people that overtalk and do this and that. And you have to be able, in order to get people focused.
Yes.
That's the thing.
And Dr. King, and Pam, Dr. King, and this is what I think so many people miss, to Reverend McIntosh's point at the top. Dr. King gave us the blueprint for all of this, right? And so I'm not saying that everything is riding on Dr. King and his mission and vision, but he gave us so much, and his life was cut so short that we really have whitewashed him and minimized him. He gave us this blueprint. You know what he called the people you're talking about, Pam, in the sorority life and fraternity life, bacillus? Drum majors for justice. The drum majors have to push folks, right? And he talked about that when he came to Raleigh, North Carolina, Shaw University and HBCU, and said, hey, some of you kids are going to get arrested. I love your energy. And hey, we need that. But who are the folks that are going to bail you out? Let's make sure we know who the pastors are who are going to pray for you. Do you have leaders in your community who can take off work for a few days? Right. Somebody has to. And in that moment, he was the drum major for justice in that singular moment. And so we have to have people with a vision, Pam, but people who are not prideful. People who know how to partner and create partnerships, but who are not prideful. And
That's
so
right.
Dr.
And not
King
feel threatened. That's right.
Right. And so Dr. King gave us the blueprint for this and said that we need leaders in every space, right? In the business space, in this, well, civil rights spans all spaces, but in the church space. And so I just want to make one comment before I yield the floor to Reverend Dawn and say that we have become more of an individualistic society in every culture, right? In every culture. And so the Black church, where it was the backbone of the civil rights movement, it is not that strong, at least anymore. And so we have to get back into the community. We have to get back into those family programs you were talking about, Pam. We're seeing attacks on DEI and Black history. The Black church, and I'm not saying it all rides on the Black church, but we know what it is. Come on, let's have a real conversation. Black folks in this country have been targeted, dehumanized, and brutalized for generations. And so we have to stick up for ourselves. So we need more education programs while they're dismantling our history. We've got to get back to that. And we can't let this social media, and to Reverend McIntosh's point, folks have arrived. And so now I have a Mercedes Benz, but you don't have what it takes to survive 80 years like the white folks do, because they have that generational wealth, because they have healthcare pipelines and funding streams. So let's talk about it. We are still, he said, if you can't crawl, walk. If you can't walk, run. But by all means necessary, keep moving forward. And as Pastor Holland, as he comes up on the screen, that's Pastor Holland from Fuquay Varina. We have to have a movement of unity. We have to have a movement of unity to move forward in strength. And so what I'm looking for in this year and over these next 4 years is Black folks and all marginalized folks to come together and understand and know that the world looks different. It looks different for us, but that we can work together to try and achieve justice and continue moving forward.
Right. And economic justice was a major part of Dr.
Very
King's
important. Very important.
Reverend Dawn, you want to interject anything in there?
Look, both of them were saying so many good things. I'm like, where do I fit in? But yeah, it's going to be challenging, but it's going to be necessary. You know, because again, everybody is in their little corner. We're all operating in our silos. We all are kings of our little castles, and it's going to be hard to give up some of those kingships to work and play nice in the sandbox with everybody else. But as more and more of the things that we have become accustomed to get pulled back by this new regime, we're going to begin to understand more than ever that we really need each other. I think about how, during COVID, we learned how to work together, to help get tested and then to help people get vaccinated. I vaccinated hundreds and hundreds of people. We met at Halifax Community College, and it didn't matter if they were Black or white, young or old. Everybody came to get those vaccines because they were afraid to die from COVID. And the people that performed the services, we were all colors. Nobody was talking about politics then. They were talking about helping to live.
Stay alive.
Now we have to get back to that because our lives depend on this as well. We have to get back to our real grassroots, everything. Some people are learning from scratch. Some of us have been around for a while, Dr. McIntosh, and we do remember some of those things the way they were. They can be some of the teachers. But then they also have to be learners because we've got this whole young generation now that's tech savvy and knows how to use social media and all that good stuff. We're going to have to, it's going to be a lot of give and take. But it's necessary. That's how we're going to get through this.
I want to show you guys, share another video with you, and I'm going to cut it short because he's kind of long-winded. And I'm getting back to this. Speaking of charlatans and greed, and this guy, to me, I call him a fake pastor, but of course he would be there for Trump. Hold on. Let's see this. Here he is.
Oh, Lord.
Dream again. We pray that we would fulfill the true meaning of our creed, that we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. We pray that you use our president, that we will live in a nation where we will not be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, we are so grateful today that you will use our 47th president so we would sing with new meaning, my country, 'tis of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and because America is called to be a great nation, we believe that you will make this come true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire.
He's plagiarizing. I'm sorry.
From the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous hilltops of California. But God, we're asking you not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain, Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and every molehill in Mississippi, from every state, every city, every village, and every hamlet. And when we let freedom ring, we will be able to speed up that day where all of your children, black men and white men, Protestant and Catholic, Jew and Gentile, will be able to sing in the meaning of that old Negro spiritual, free at last. Free at last. Thank you, God Almighty. We are free at last. If you believe where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Come on, put your hands together and give your great God great glory.
Ooh-wee.
Bernice ought to sue the pants off of that man for plagiarizing her dad.
Not only did he not give Dr. King, not only did that pastor not give Dr. King credit, but can you hear us, Pam?
Yeah. I don't know what happened. I think my YouTube went into a loop.
That's okay. I was just saying, not only did that pastor not give Dr. King credit, but I don't think half of the people in that room even know what a Negro spiritual is. But that's another conversation. I think that goes back to the point, and I'll be real brief here, that folks are not educated. I don't think a lot of the people in that room even knew he was talking about Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech, word for word. Also, he interjected in there some Constitution or Declaration of Independence. I'm not sure which one. And he didn't credit that at all, you know, in the words of the founding document of this country. No, he just said this. And I think a lot of people were like, oh, there's a black man for Trump, and see, we're diverse, and we're not even going to interrogate this.
But I want to tell you, after that, no sooner than he finished that, I think Trump and his minions gave him a coin.
Yes.
And he got on his social media page and started
cryptocurrency. Yes.
Yeah, for his coin. So I'm pretty sure that it was gifted to him because all of them have a coin now. That's the thing in the administration. They've got coins. And so he probably said, we'll pay you, we'll give you your own coin and you can sell it and you'll make money. Yeah, I'm positive that it's just nuts. Yeah, it's just a mess.
Listen, I've been holding this for a minute. I put it on my Facebook page a couple of days ago. At this point in time, we need some Maccabees.
Some Maccabees?
Some Maccabees. Last month, when Hanukkah, Hanukkah, the Jewish holiday, the Festival of Lights, originates because a Jewish family the Maccabees, father and sons, refused to allow Antiochus Epiphanes, the emperor at the time, to make it a crime for them to exercise their faith. He banned circumcisions. He banned not eating pork. He even was so bold as to bring a pig into the temple and sacrifice it on the altar, and went and sent his own troops to every Jewish community, demanding and insisting that priests and leaders would sign off on doing it the king's way. And the Maccabees brothers and their daddy, when the enemy posing as the state came to their village, they killed them soldiers, and that motivated the people to say, we're not, they did an Angela Davis, I no longer will accept the things I cannot change, but I'm going to change the things I cannot accept. And because of the devotion and the commitment and energy of the Maccabees brothers, they defeated the army, they defeated the state, they put the emperor on the run, and reestablished community. We're going to need, I mean, I was reading the other day that those, what do they call them? The inspectors general. That got fired on Friday night.
Illegal.
They wrote a letter yesterday and said, we're not going.
Oh, all right. I didn't hear that part.
Yeah, the head IG wrote a letter to him and to the lawyer, the White House lawyer, said, according to the law, and quoted the sections of law, you can't fire us without giving 30 days notice to Congress, number one. And number two, there's only certain things you can fire us for. You can't get rid of us just to put your people in. We have to have violated the terms of our office. And we're not vacating until y'all do it right. Okay? And if you can't prove it, we're here. And so that's what we're gonna need. Congress people. In Congress, Republicans and Democrats. To say no. We're going to need Supreme Court justices to say no. The last time he was the president, what saved us from fascism was federal court judges who obeyed the law, who valued their interpretation of the Constitution and the law to be more, even the ones that he appointed. Several of them said no. Okay, that's all it takes. This is a spoiled brat who just needs to be told no every time he's attempting to do something wrong. Most of these executive orders are illegal. They have no teeth in them. All people have to do is say, we don't care that you signed it. If it's not legal, we're not doing it.
And we need to and that's the thing, the pushback, just like all of these countries are doing.
That's right.
Denmark has cussed them out. Mexico, she done told them off, and they're sending the planes, but the military planes back. And he said now he's putting a tariff on Colombia, I think it is, because they sent his military plane back. But you
know what Colombia did? They said, I tell you what, we'll come get our own folk. Okay.
I hadn't heard that part yet.
Yes, they said the president of Colombia said, I will send my plane and bring my own people back home. You ain't got to send them. Just tell me where they are and I'll come get them. I'll put them on my plane and I'll bring them back home.
Can I just say this, Pam, about that that pastor. I don't even know his name, but that goes to the point I'm about to make.
Well, his name is Lorenzo Sewell. Yeah.
It's okay
And he's
because it
out of
goes.
Detroit.
Yeah.
It's okay because it goes to the point I'm about. It's okay because it goes to the point I'm about to make. Those are the type of folks that we just need to ignore these next
That's
4
it.
years because he really doesn't have much power, at least at this current time. He is a pastor
None.
from Detroit. I have from my notes. He also organized that Blacks for Trump event or Conservatives for Trump event a few months ago where they shipped in white folks into his church in Detroit. It
That's
was like
right.
a majority white audience. So
Mhm.
the Bible says to beware of false prophets and teachers.
That's
And
right.
so I'm just telling the audience, well, I'm not telling anybody, but I'm suggesting to the audience that when I talked earlier about do not disturb, this is one of the contacts that should not be allowed through to your phone. Okay, so don't get so bent out of shape about this. Obviously, Reverend McIntosh and we already mentioned that he plagiarized, right? And that he does not know how to cite his sources. So that means he's not trustworthy nor reliable. So leave him out of your lives for these next 4 years. And let's focus on some of these things that matter, which are community. To Reverend Dawn's point, it's not just a Black thing, right? I want the audience to know, because there are some white folks on here. It's not just a Black and a brown thing.
It is
Democrats,
not.
Republicans, Black folks, white folks, brown folks, we can all have a say in justice, right? We all have a stake in justice. And so please, I just want folks to understand that yes, Black folks and brown folks are marginalized in this country in unique ways, but we can still all work together. And so I think a lot of times white folks, again, I'm not speaking about everyone, I'm speaking about some, think that, oh, they're going to be attacked if they speak out one way or another, or Black folks or brown folks are just so aggressive. That's because for over 200 years, we've always been attacked first, right? And so we have this initial instinct to fight back and to protect ourselves, right? And so the thing to do for folks looking to ally, from my perspective, is to come humbly, right? But show us that you have an attitude of fighting with us, not against us, right? Show us that you are in this a fight, because it really is a battle, with us, right? And be willing to be educated. And again, Black and brown folks, we still have much more education to do ourselves. Carter G. Woodson talked about the miseducation of the Negro. But my point in all of that is every society, every generation, every year is going to have shortfalls. But we have to keep moving, as Pastor Holland said in the comments, forward in strength, right? Together. So I just don't want that point to go unsaid, that I'm not just talking to Black folks. I'm not just talking about people who are in this fight because they've been directly victimized by injustice, but we actually need allies with power and privilege so that we can easily respond to silly pastors like that, but actually build strength on the things that matter, which is policy, which is justice, and which are laws, right? Yes. I'm in law school now. And so when we're talking about these laws and talking about what's valid and not, Reverend McIntosh's point is a good one. We really sleep on judges. Judges are important. I don't have much hope in this Supreme Court, but the federal judges, many of whom are Black, that were appointed by Biden, I do have hope in them that they know what justice looks like, and they're going to do their thing to make sure it's achieved.
That's right.
Reverend Don, what would you say to Brian Jones' statement right here in the chat? Because I was going to say something, and he might mean more than that. But what would you say to that? He said, "Let God's will be done." Like my pastor preached yesterday, let us keep our eyes on God. But you know, God gives us. Go ahead, Reverend.
Well, God did send some plagues now.
Okay, Reverend.
Yeah.
And he did allow a wall of Jericho to come down. I mean, you know, there are things that God does, and God uses us to make them happen. I mean, I know you talked to, I remember a guy telling me, I think, what's his name? Walter Brueggemann, professor of Hebrew Bible. And Walter Brueggemann talks about the first 3 plagues. The changing of the Nile to blood and such. The Egyptian priests and magicians could replicate everything that Moses did. But when God sent the gnats, that's when the magicians and the Egyptian priests realized they couldn't get rid of them, but they couldn't replicate them either. And so it falls to us to become them gnats that are the constant thorns in people's sides, in people's faces. We can't go into hiding. Okay. Now I know Black women have said we just gonna sit on the sidelines and we gonna sip tea and munch popcorn. But we know that when it affects us and ours, the mama bear in us is gonna come out.
Right.
And so we have to be the gnats.
Yeah.
We have to be somebody that disrupts that power source where they can't do anything with us.
Okay. Reverend Don Daly-Mack, Brian Jones's message there, please.
Well, I mean, we absolutely have to keep our eyes on God, right? Mm-hmm. This is not the first time that anyone in history proclaimed themselves to be a God, starting with Satan himself. He wanted to be like God. And there have been people throughout the ages who have put themselves in a place. And the people that suffered at their hands all had to keep their eyes on God. Times are going to get hard. Some people are going to see some things that they've never seen before.
Right.
Some are going to say, oh, I remember this, but I never thought I'd see it again.
Right.
But ultimately, those of us that know God are going to have to keep our eyes on God because we don't know the mind of God. We know what he shows us, right? We don't know why things happen the way they are. In the Bible, whenever the Israelites were in captivity, it was because they had done wrong. God said, if you do this, I'll take care of you. But if you don't do this, I'm going to let somebody come take you away. And then they turned around and did whatever they wanted to do. If we look at this nation, we have all participated in doing whatever we want to do. And so sometimes you're going to reap what you sow. Sometimes you got to pay the consequences. But still, we got to keep our eyes on God.
Right.
When enslaved people were brought here, they weren't necessarily Christians, but they had their form of God. You better believe they kept their eyes on God.
Yes.
Those are the ones that made it. And we're still here because of them, because they kept their eyes on God. And so we're going to, in order for us to survive these next 4 years or however long it's going to be that we have to deal with what we have to deal with, absolutely, we must keep our eyes on God and his will be done.
Right.
Yes, I agree, Pam. I know just in wrapping up here, I wanted to respond to Reverend Dawn's statement and say it's so important that we do keep our eyes on God. I think it's also important, especially for the biblicists out there, when you study the scriptures, to state that God has his eyes on us. He's watching his people and he wants to see what we're up to. Are we abiding by the word, his word? Are we reaching out to the least of these? Are we, humbling ourselves and turning from our wicked ways? Because again, faith is an active thing. I don't even know if I mentioned that on this show tonight because I say it so much because it's so important, Pam. Faith is an active thing. So we can't just sit around and say,
not passive at all.
Let's just let things happen. No. The scriptures show us, right? When you actually look at the words, and that's the problem. A lot of folks don't read the book. When you look at the words, there's so much activity there, even in waiting for Jesus's birth, right? That expectant hope, that's active. Looking to the hills from whence cometh our help. Looking is an active word. And so it's not just that we sit back and say God will handle it. No, God will handle it because he is all-knowing and in control. He's expecting us to help him bring his kingdom a little closer to earth. So these next 4 years are not the time to sit back. It's time to look up at God and then move our feet along with his vision.
Right. That's exactly what I was hoping to get to. And faith without works is definitely dead. That's for sure. Well, listen, guys, can
I just say one last thing?
Very brief. We're way over time.
Augustine, doctor of the church, African bishop, said, because somebody said it and I quoted it, God doesn't make things again. God is in the business of creating new things. And so as we exercise our faith and develop active resistance, we know that God is going to do a new thing.
All right, guys. Well, I have enjoyed everyone. You guys have been, you listeners, you guys have been very active in the stream, and I appreciate you all so much. And I hope you will subscribe to my YouTube channel, please. 3rd year anniversary.
Congratulations
Keep up the
again.
good work.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's wave everybody off goodbye. I have a very interesting show next week. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Right. Good night.